There we go. So good evening, everyone. We are very happy to have you join us this evening for what promises to be a very, very interesting session on content and on why it's more about the content and less about marketing. You've all seen the title of the um, talk today. And it can't be more fitting that we have Rajasekar KS of Matrimony with us. Why do I say it can't be more fitting than to have Rajasekar with us? Because of his credentials. Let me just read it out to you for your information. He was chosen as one of the top 100 influential marketing leaders in India by the World Marketing Congress 2016. India's most influential content marketing professional by World Marketing Congress 2017. Adobe and Paul Reiter's top 100 content leaders 2017. Top 100 content marketers in the world 2018. Can't get better than this, right? It does actually. He writes for ET Tech, BusinessWorld, and BusinessLine, and has published more than 200 articles in India's leading newspapers. And when newspapers reach out to you to write about content, you know that they're recognizing somebody who's a, expert in the field. He's a content evangelist and speaks on content marketing, social media culture, and digital impact. And he's spoken at multiple forums, including CIPI's Digital Leadership Summit. He helps organizations leverage social media to create conversations that leads to engagement and to build lasting relationships. And he helps create, manage, and market compelling content to build lasting value. So you can see that we couldn't have anybody better to talk to us about content. So welcome, Raj. We're really happy to have you with us, and thank you for agreeing to come and share your knowledge and expertise with us.
It's my pleasure, David. Thanks to Social Beat, and good afternoon to the audience here. I'm so happy to be here sharing my views and 4 decades of experience in content. Let me share the screen with you so we get started. Can you all see the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes.
Sure. Good afternoon. So I'm just going to do a straight drive into this. Content marketing is more about content and less about marketing. And you'll see why. Because we need to break a mindset of marketing that gets into content or that gets into the way of content. Content marketing is as old as the hills in the sense that it is nothing new. It's not something that came up in the 21st century. You would see all the tribal stories that were told about the chieftains, the epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, the Greek and Roman mythology, the Bible, and several such great stories that were captured. They are all compelling and brilliant pieces of content marketing because they build influence around the hero. They build influence around some ism, around some philosophy. And they drove people's interest and engagement in that. So it's nothing new. The earliest example that we know of in terms of content marketing is a small broadsheet that was put out in 1867 by Hartford Steam Boiler Inspection and Insurance Company. This offered technical information for people who are using its product to solve their own problems. This is the earliest example of content marketing. Some of the other examples, right, are from the agricultural world. There are people who have been having tractor and automotive that was used in the agricultural sector, and they had been putting out information in broadsheets and small magazines. But another brilliant example that we can talk about is Michelin tires. In 1900, they put out a guide for motorists. The reason for putting out the guide for motorists was that hardly a few thousand cars were running in the city where Michelin tires was. And so they realized that if people don't buy cars, if more number of cars were not sold, the tires could not be sold. So they found a brilliant creative way to market their product by putting out a guide for motorists, which talked about what can you see, what can you do around this place, weekend getaways, and various things that people could see within that city. But trying to get people interested in the subject, they were able to make people think of cars. And when they bought the cars, the tires were Michelin. What a brilliant way to think about content. Thinking about selling cars or pushing people to buy cars when you are actually selling tires. Now, the question that crops up in all of our minds is, what is the goal of content marketing? The goal of content marketing is to build influence. That is the primary need. You have to build influence in the mindset of the audience that you're targeting. Of course, the general mindset is to generate traffic, leads, and revenue. But the other brilliant way content practitioners or marketers should think of is, how can you spark conversations about the larger area of your product or your service? And if you can spark those conversations, if you can make people talk about subjects that interest them around the area where you sell your product and services, whether you're a B2B, a B2C, or a C2C, then the goal of content marketing is met. And the fourth most powerful thing marketers need to think of is, how do I uplift the brand? How do I bring positivity? How do I bring vibrancy into the content work that resonates with the audience? And therefore, they look up to the brand for it. When we start talking about content, one of the key things I would urge you to consider is you should have your own content philosophy. That content philosophy or the underlying characteristic that is inside you is what will drive your content. And the first and the most important one, from my point of view, is intent. The intent of creating content to solve a customer's problem, that is more important than the content being created. Why is intent more important? You just take the example of Mahatma Gandhi. If Mahatma Gandhi's intention was to lead the Indian front during the British era, if he wanted to become a leader and if he wanted to become a future prime minister, I don't think all of us would be remembering. I don't think Nelson Mandela or Obama or any of the other leaders around the world would have been inspired by the great man. They were inspired because of his intent in creating a better society where no violence exists, where there was peace for everyone. His intention to push non-violence is what makes him an inspiration to generations even after he is passed away. That's why intent is more important than content. But content is more important than marketing. Yes, all the time as marketers, we would have a mindset, what can I create because sales is going down? What can I probably put out for people to consume because my leads have come down? That's the way we think about content. But content, pure play content by itself is more important than the marketing power that you put behind it. So when you create content, you look at creating content that solves a problem for the customer, that provokes a conversation with your audience, that lifts the brand high above, that looks to do social good beyond the transaction of selling your service or product. The other philosophy that I rely on consistently in my life is always put the customer in the front seat. It's very, very important to have the customer in the front seat. Let the brand take the back seat. The brand may look like it's taking a back seat, but actually it's grabbing as much mind share as possible because the customer is the focus of the content being created.
Yeah.
If you were to give an example from Bharat Matrimony, I would like to talk about a project that last year won the Buzz in Content Award for being among the top 15 content programs that were done in 2019. Every year, Bharat Matrimony does over 500 interviews with couples who have found themselves on our service. And easily, it would have been any marketer's dream to actually make the customers talk about how they use the product or service, or what did the service mean to them. But what we have done is we put the customer in the front seat, and these stories are all lifestyle stories about how the customers are anchored to each other, how the couple bonds with each other. What is the ritual that keeps them going every day? What do they do on their weekends? What do they like about each other? What transformation has marriage brought in them? These are the things that they talk about. And we let them tell their story. And we are not asking for a testimonial on Bharat Matrimony. By putting the customer in the front seat, these stories have resonated with more than millions and millions of people who receive our regular newsletter and who come to read up the stories on our site. Because the stories are about people, are about happiness, what marriage does to people, how does it transform people, why do people choose each other, what is it people like about each other, whether similar likes actually go together or dissimilar likes go together. You will get to know all of that when you read the stories, but the brand is nowhere to be seen. If you're talking about the influence that these stories build, the influence is tremendous. There is a story that is left behind in the minds of the audience when they read it. And the brand is remembered long after they have closed that page. That's the success of that content. The fourth philosophy is always keep in mind that you should tell a story, not sell a story. The reason we say you have to tell a story is that stories are something that for ages have been hardwired in us. We've been hearing stories ever since we were born. And stories connect the dots with us. Stories resonate with us. Stories have a residual value inside. What happens when you try to sell a story? What happens when you try to sell pretty much anything? There is resistance from the audience. They start putting on their glasses. They start judging you. What is he trying to sell? Why is he saying this? So when resistance builds, it's not easy to push your story to the consumer. But if you tell a story, then he's willing to listen to the story. But if you sell a story, he probably hears the story, but he doesn't listen to the story. That's the reason why you should tell your story, not sell your story. Now the question arises is, if story is the most important thing for content practitioners, if the story is the most important thing for content marketers, what story should we say? What story should we tell our customers? What story should we tell our potential customers? These stories are not what you care for. These stories are not what you do. These stories are what you stand for. These stories are what you care for. If you are a company that's selling a product, and if you stand for a social good that looks at the environment, that looks at maybe the girl child's cause, that looks at progressive women like Bharat Matrimony's case, then you are caring for something. And when you tell your story, the world wants to listen to your story. They don't want anyone to come and tell what they do. They want to say, what do you stand for? What do you care for? I know what you do. I can just go to a website and find that out. But what do you stand for? What do you care for in this world? What is there beyond the transaction that your company is interested in? What does your brand ultimately wants to leave behind as a footprint on the sands of time? Tell us that. That's why the guru of modern marketing, Seth Gordon, brilliantly says, and so succinctly, so briefly, I don't think you have to read any book if you can just get these few words in your head. Content marketing is all the marketing that's left. And that's exactly what's happening in this world today. It's the only thing that can market your service. It's the only thing that can resonate with your audience. As we take this journey to see content philosophy, how to tell stories, the next thing that pops up in our head is how to create content that rocks. Now, the easiest way is to just think of a few things that competition is doing. Look at few things that others are doing in the field and then say, okay, I'll work my content around that. But a content leader looks at it from a very strategic point of view, is getting close to the customers is what gets you close to the content that will rock. When you get close to the customers, you will understand their anxieties, their problems, their issues in life. And you will see where your company, your brand, your product or service fits into it. So you have to get close to the customers to find out what exactly would click as content for them. The next thing is to look at where are the customers spending their time? What are they doing on a daily basis? What drives them? What motivates them? What do they do during work? What do they do during break time? What are the things they're listening to when they're driving or riding? Those are the things you need to find out. What kind of content do your customers consume? Audio, video? Are they on a particular platform? Do they like a particular form? Do they like ebooks? Are they the kind of guys who are on OTT all the time? Or they are on Kindle? They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook or Instagram? You need to find out what kind of content your customers are already consuming. The next thing to look at would be finding content gaps in your domain. Now, by content gaps, I mean, let's say you are in the hotel industry and you have a 5-star property. Now, obviously, there are 2-3 things that the hotels do. The first thing is he needs to have occupation of the rooms. The second thing is he has a lot of restaurants. The third is he lets out his halls, perhaps for various functions. So he needs to look at these 3 pieces and see how he can drive interest and engagement for people to come in and ask him for that service. Right? Now, if they go onto Google or onto Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or any of the other medias and search for information that they are already serving and see what's available, then you will find out that there are people who are talking about this, but not that. There are people who are talking very little about this. There are some people who are not talking about that at all. Then you look at which content you want to build, look at what kind of traffic is already available for that, what kind of interest is already available, and then you'll want to build the content around that. So if you take, for example, while finding your content gaps, there is always the Google keyword tool that you could use. It can tell you everything that people are searching for in the core areas and the broad areas of your domain. Please use them. Search for all the portals that you use. Search for all the search engines that are available. Search on all the social media platforms that are available. You will find that there are content gaps everywhere. Decide which content gap you want to fill in. Where do you want to build your leadership, and go and occupy that. That will drive you leads, engagement, traffic, customers, and revenue 24/7. Once you have found your content gaps, what's the next thing that should come onto your mind is to hire good writers. And for heaven's sake, please do not be Scroogey while paying or hiring these writers. Good content writers who know their craft and who have elevated this art of creating content that deepens the experience of the brand with the consumers are hard to come by in the market. There is a high value that is placed on them. Please hire good writers. Please hire people who understand your customers and their problems, people who understand your domain, and then make them do creative content. Do not, for heaven's sake, go to somebody because they're doing articles at $500, $400, $300, ₹1 per word, and all of that. You will land up with bad quality content. Hire good writers who can understand you and the domain, and then start creating a plan that works for you. The next thing that we should be looking at is, how does one develop a content perspective? You need to have a perspective. You need to have a point of view before you start developing content, before you start marketing that content. So developing that perspective is very important for leaders like you. So I'll give you 5 stories here that will kind of provoke some thoughts in you as to how you can look at this. What kind of content can a hotel create? Well, I was making a presentation to about 20 CEOs a couple of years back. And at the end of it, during the Q&A time, one of the 5-star hotel chain CEOs was curious. He said, I'm interested in this, but tell me, what kind of content can a hotel create? And so I asked him, how do people come to the hotel? He said, they Google, or they've already come, or they get a reference. I said, wow, that's a good starting point. So what do they do after they come and stay here in your hotel? See, they come here to do business, they come to visit people, they could be visiting other companies, or they could be on a holiday. So what do they do outside of work? They would want to go to good restaurants to eat. They would want to go and see a few places which are well known in that city. They would want to, if they are on a weekend, do a getaway for a day or two. So those are all the things that the hotel needs to be looking at in terms of content. Can you put a guide to that city that's from your hotel chain that everybody can freely download from your hotel website? That will work for you 24/7. Because when people start searching for what can I do in that city, when they start planning, they haven't actually booked the hotel, but they're planning to go to the city, they start searching for it, and then your content comes up, which shows all of this. Then they consume the content, they like whatever you've written about it, they see the pictures and the videos, and they say, well, they've given us so much of information. Why don't we book the hotel here? So there is a lot every industry can do. You just have to creatively think all the allied aspects of your business. And if you look at what does the customer do with your product or service, and what does he do otherwise, and what help he may need, then you will be able to figure out a very good creative content strategy. how can a sweets chain engage with customers? Now, this was again a meeting that I had with one of the large sweet chains doing a multi-crore business. And he, along with their social media team, had met up and we were just having a chat. So 15 minutes into it, he said that I'm very interested in how people are engaging themselves here. I want to know what can I do as a sweets chain? Because I just create sweets, I put them out in the stores. That's all I can do. I sell. What kind of content could I probably create? I said, you have a large number of chefs who specialize in creating some savories, who specialize in creating some sweets. I said, why can't you make those people teach your customers how to make some of these things? I said, start a series of videos where people can learn from your chefs, where people can learn from the experts as to what it means to make a particular sweet. And the conversation went on, and they, few weeks later, actually started executing the project. How a book made mangoes tastier. Quite intriguing, isn't it, this headline? How can a book make mangoes tastier? I don't think so, it's possible. Well, let me tell you the story. This was again a large hotelier who had invited me for a conversation. He had a 75-acre mango farm of the variety Imam Pasand. And he was exporting this variety to several countries. He told me, what can I do to make people remember me after they've finished the mango season, after they've tasted the mangoes? What can I tell them more than the consumption of the mango? And so we drove to his farm. I stayed there for about 6-7 hours, going through and seeing that he had an organic farm, the kind of care and the love he had for these mangoes. It thrilled me endlessly. And when we came back, I told him, you could write a book on this variety called Imam Pasand. Now, Imam Pasand was a fruit made so famous by the Mughal kings. They loved these fruits so much because they were the tastiest mangoes ever. And they had their soldiers guard these mango farms for months because they didn't want anyone to take away a single mango. So they put together a booklet on mangoes that talked about what is the origin of Imam Pasand and wrote the stories about how kings had actually guarded these. What kind of dishes can be made with this mango? And how should this mango be actually eaten? How many kinds of juices could you potentially make? What kind of sweets could you make at home with these mangoes? All of this was put into a small booklet, and the booklet went out with every exported carton of mangoes. In the weeks that went by after that summer, he received mails from so many of his customers. He said that they said that they never knew the history of the fruit they were eating. They just loved its taste. They knew the name. But now they have a lot of stories to talk about. So the next time a guest comes to their house and they share this Imam Pasand with them, here's he telling a story from the book. And the book made the mangoes tastier for the customer. Well, can an ebook make cash registers ring? I'm sure there are a lot of practitioners here. There are a lot of marketers here who are from the B2B industry. I'm sure, yes, they know what power and engagement and leads and traffic an ebook can drive. Certainly, it can drive revenues for you. And here again, I'm going to share with you an example in one of my previous companies called Empire Mobile. We were launching mobile application development services just after the iPhone was launched and when the App Store was being made. So we put out a fantastic book on the whole ecosystem of this iPhone development because it was just new to this world. People didn't know how to hire, people didn't know what technology was used, people didn't know how long it takes to create an app, people didn't know how to price the development, they didn't know how much to pay the developer, they didn't know how to market the app, they didn't know how to name the app, they didn't know how to keep it safe and secure in terms of an idea. So we wrote a book, and these were the secrets that we talked to them about: how to create the winning idea, where to find developers, how to protect your app idea, how much to pay for the iPhone app development, how to price your iPhone app, and how to market an iPhone app. These and more we talked about in that book, and we just put it out free, but we gated it. People just had to put in a name and mail ID and take the book. We had thousands and thousands of hits, and within the first few weeks, this is a screen of the first few weeks, there were over 13,000 people who downloaded this. There was a specific number given in the book. It was recorded in the sense that every call that came on that phone number, there was a record to keep a link back to the book that was done. And we had thousands and thousands of dollars that poured in from a single book. This book is about choosing an opportunity first when something new pops up. Well, this is another interesting way to look at content. How can technology help create, drive content and engagement? This is very interesting. And what I'm going to show you is I had written to Rashmi Sinha, the co-founder of SlideShare. It was later acquired by LinkedIn. I had actually sent her an idea of putting up free templates on SlideShare because I said there are a lot of people who have content, but it's a hassle for them to create a PPT. I'm sure many of us have that issue of creating PPTs. So I suggested the idea of putting about 200 free templates in various categories that people could just download and then upload the content in that. I said you would get new people who are going to put up content, and you'll get new consumers who are looking at this kind of content. And I'm sure that your traffic will be up by at least 10% in 30 days after you launch this template. So Rashmi Sinha sent me this mail. She said she loved the idea of free templates and several of the other suggestions, and she was curious about what do I do, and she actually offered me a job. So how do you look at a service? SlideShare was actually puzzled how they didn't think about the idea that giving free templates could mean building more content, could mean creating more creators. And when the creators come, the consumers will also come. So subsequently, what happened? 11 months after this idea was sent to Rashmi and she confirmed it, they launched something called the Haiku Slides. You can today see the Haiku Slides over there, thanks to the suggestion that I had sent over. That was technology working to create massive opportunities for new content. So those are the 5 stories. Now we come back to find out, where is the audience online? That's the question that everybody is asking, because today marketing is so disparate. Consumers are there in so many channels. You have your mobiles, you have your news, you have your entertainment, you have OTT platforms, you have TV, you have social media. So where are these people? How do you discover them? You know there are people, you know that there are millions of your potential customers out there, but finding out where they are, discovering the exact platform they are in, discovering the location where they are, is the dream of all marketers. So the first step towards this is the discovery of that audience. It's important for you to spend a lot of time trying to discover your audience. Again, as I said, there are search engines that are available. There is social media platforms that are available. There are various sites which are available. where you can just go and search for information that is key or relevant to your audience. Look at ways in which your potential audience would actually search for your service. And then you'll be able to discover where they are. Of course, they will be there on several channels. You don't want to take multiple channels or bite off more than you can chew. Take one or two channels, focus your energies, create the content, and engage with them. So you create, then you market and monitor. And of course, after all that, you have to measure the success. The ROI is what your bosses will question you about whenever you do any kind of marketing. So the first hurdle for you is, after you've done all this discovery, is to look at how do you create content. So the immediate thing that crops up for content professionals and marketers and leaders is people just want to create their own content. But I'm sure there are several other creative ways of looking at content, and curation is a very, very important bit of that. Curation is about leveraging content that has already been created and then sharing it through your social media, sharing it through your newsletters, and building curiosity about your own content, about your own service. That's very important. Curation is an art that content marketers should learn. Then, of course, you have UGC, you have your customers, you have your social media users. You could use all of them to generate as much content as possible. But before you do look at creating this, there are things that you need to think about before you create the content. Consumers always engage with content that are from trustworthy sources or from trustworthy people. So consumers engage deeper with people whom they trust. So you will have to build trustworthy content. Why am I emphasizing on trustworthy content? It's like, you just don't do a 300 word piece, a 400 word piece. It has to be either a pillar content that is quite lengthy and gives enough on that subject in terms of insights, which is not easily available elsewhere, right? Or you can give an ebook that deals extensively with everything that they're thinking about, that talks extensively about the challenges that they have. That can build trust. Or you can talk to an expert and put up that interview. That is something that they would trust. So build content that will build trust with people. And second, as I already emphasized at the first point, intent is more important than content. So please drive the content programs with the intention of solving the problem for the customer, not solving the problem for the marketing department. If you solve the problem for the customer, you will rock in terms of whatever engagement and numbers that you want. And the third, I'm again emphasizing, customers don't care about what you do. They're not interested in the phone as a device. They're interested in what is the iPhone as a company thinking. That they want to serve the best of the best to people, that they want to make things easier and faster for people. What is it? It's not about the iPhone. It's not about the device. It's about the philosophy that drives the company. It's about the passion that drives them to create better and better products for their customers. They care about why you do. Then, of course, after you have discovered your customer and then you have discovered the content gaps, then you started creating the content. Now you come to the question, how do I promote this content? Of course, you have already found out where the customers live. You have already found out what they consume, in what forms. It can be audio, it can be video, it can be text, it can be emails. Please find what they consume and serve content in a way that doesn't interrupt them. That's the best thing that you could do about your content program. And don't forget to give them something to share. With so much time being spent on a mobile devices, with so much time that customers are spending on social media, if you give them something to share, they will be really, really happy, because that will mean that they are actually gaining something from their network by sharing your content. So give them the opportunity to gain something, to feel good about sharing your content. And of course, everybody has a point of view. Everybody has things to say about any subject. Please provide the platform for conversation, and then your content will rock. So I'm quickly coming to some of the best case studies that you should actually review when you look at content marketing. The first one is Baby Center. Johnson and Johnson created this several years ago as the guide for those people who are going to be mothers very soon. And it put up content on every week of pregnancy and right up to the childbirth. So the mothers began to trust Johnson and Johnson because they didn't know what was happening with them. They didn't know what were these signs. So they looked up to the weekly mailers that came from Johnson and Johnson, and they knew what they were undergoing is exactly what they are talking about. They knew how to take care of the baby. They knew when to go for the health checks. They knew what signs to look out for. The baby is not normal. All of that Johnson and Johnson had built into this unique program called the Baby Center. It drives over 55 million unique visitors per month and has over 37.5 million app downloads till date. I'm coming to our own example of Bharat Matrimony, where we decided that having 60% of the market share in online matrimony, we thought a category leader should do something beyond the transaction called matchmaking. So we thought, what can potentially we do for people who have already found a match, so that we can enable and enrich their relationship with each other so that they can lead a happy married life. And then we came out with happymarriages.com, which is Bharat Matrimony's guide to newlywed couples. We took about 3 months to study the issues that couples face from the first day of their marriage to the first few years of their marriage. And then we put all of these into different buckets. And then we brought in writers, authors, and then we put in more than 500 themes to talk about. And then we created the site and launched it. Today, we have thousands of subscribers. We have thousands of visitors. And of course, it has built a lot of influence and respect for the brand in the market. We went beyond matchmaking. We were guiding couples in the early years of marriage, and we're looking at specific challenge from 0 to 4 years of marriage. At this point in time, it's undergoing maintenance, so it should be up in a few days' time. The third example that I loved was Khan's Academy. I'm sure all of us have heard about Khan's Academy. It started with Khan trying to teach his cousin mathematics, and his cousin got very interested. And the first few videos that he made were viral in his own network. And then he went on to create Khan's Academy. Today, Google is an investor. There are several people who are invested. There are millions of people who are actually looking at the content that has been created. The video is available in several languages, and lakhs of teachers have actually registered on that platform and run Khan's Academy videos in their actual live classrooms. That's the beauty of this content project. I'm done, folks. I hope you enjoyed the insights that I shared, and I'm all ready to take questions.
Thanks, Raj. I think that was like you said, a very, very insightful talk on content marketing, and very, very interesting examples given as well that brought them really to life. There are quite a few questions, so we'll dive into them straight away because we have about 15 minutes left.
Yes.
You were bang on time, okay? The introduction took about 4 minutes, so not to worry. So the first question is, what is the future of content marketing as the video vernacular and voice come into use?
So you see, the future is also going to be largely determined by the kind of technology that comes up. Before the mobile came, the world was very, very different. Print had such a powerful role to play. The mobile came, it dislodged several things. So, like that, every time a new technology comes, you will always have content marketers trying to strategically look at how to leverage that technology. Of course, voice search is coming in a big way.
Absolutely.
Alexa, Google, and the rest of the people have already made their mark in trying to push that. Voice search itself is gaining fast. Look at podcasting, the number of podcast services that have come up. Seriously, they're posing a challenge to just plain text. So, audio is definitely going to be the future. And of course, there is no way that we are going to displace the videos. The shorter versions of it, the TikTok kind of videos, are going to be the lifeline of consumption for millennials. And anybody who wants to create content has to keep looking at what disruptive technologies are available in terms of video, in terms of voice, in terms of text, in terms of the way things are served to the consumer. Because today the consumer is not going to come anywhere. We have to go to the consumer. So please look at all those disruptive technologies that will erupt and look at building content quickly for them. Get into the experimental mode as quickly as possible. Do not worry about failures. When new technology comes, just do a deep dive, do a few interviews, few content pieces, and see how it goes. Keep experimenting. That's very important. But ultimately, whatever technology comes, right? Content, quality content, and awesome content is what will sell with the customer, is what
Yeah.
will resonate with the customers. So there is not going to be any difference. Content is going to be the one that's going to be like the pollen. Content is the one that is going to be drawing your customers to you. So keep rocking, keep building great content, but you will find various forms changing, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minute. So various forms may change, technologies may change, but the core of content is never going to change. Storytelling is never going to change. It might become shorter and shorter. It will challenge you as a craft person. It will challenge you to make it, chisel it better and better, make it shorter, add video and visuals. But content is not going away anyway.
Yeah.
Storytelling is not going away anyway.
Content in different forms
Yes,
based on convenience is going to work really well in future, I think, because
absolutely.
podcasts are when you're doing something repetitive and you don't have to use your eyes for, you know, to read something or whatever, but you're
Yes.
listening all the time. So that's great. The second question is, how do you manage content for different platforms? It's a good segue from the first question.
Okay. How do you use content
For different platforms.
for different platforms? See, each of these platforms have, intrinsic behaviors. So you will have to see what kind of behavior the platform and the users see. The platform has certain restrictions. The platform says that this is the way you can play, this is the way you can create. So you need to understand what the platform is doing, what it offers, and how to leverage that platform powerfully. You should also see what the consumers are doing on that platform. What are other creators doing on that platform? And how are they actually leveraging that? If you can marry your understanding of the platform and your understanding of how consumers are consuming on that platform, then you've got a head start into that platform. So if
There's
you look
another
at
good.
tweets, for example, you know that a tweet is only X number of characters. You know a hashtag is very important. You know your link is very important, but you also need to have a powerful visual. And you need to have a 4 or 5 line that's probably written by a copywriter, not a content writer. How do you
Yeah.
intrigue people? How do you get people curious about what you do? How do you surprise people with awesome content? Look at that way.
There's another very interesting question here, Raj, from
Yes.
Selva Kumar. How do we measure content's influence on sales and revenue?
Right. That's a good question. I did expect, since so many marketers are going to be on this platform, you're
Yeah.
always looking at how do I measure? What is the ROI? Of course, you will look at engagement. You look at all your vanity metrics, which are very, very easy. You will also look at the traffic statistics. Your analytics is going to tell you all of that. You will also see what is the path they traversed after coming there. After they have come to the content, where did they go? Have they gone back into your site? Have they gone back into your service? Have they signed up your form? Have they called somebody in your office? So there are various traces that they leave behind when they engage with you and they leave that particular page or that form of content. So you always want to look at what are those. Everything from time to signing up for something, subscribing for something, clicking, liking, sharing. Each of these metrics tell you something about the depth of engagement of that content. The deeper you build your experiences, you will have better and better quality of engagement that happens.
There's another very interesting question here from Srinia. What is the best way to create content around sculptures and artwork for a social issue? Very interesting.
I'm sure there are a lot of there is a lot of history in these sculptures, right? Sculptures that are well known, they have a history. When it was created, who created it, how many days did it take to create, what did they use to create, did anybody oppose the creation or the installation of that particular sculpture, why was that created, who's the character of that sculpture. There is so much you can pretty much take about a sculpture. I'm sure you'll be able to look at origin, you look at how they created, who was created, when it was created, look at the history of that. If you talk to a curator in a museum, I'm sure you'll get a lot of inputs on how to create content on sculptures. The curator has a plethora of content on everything that is there in the museum, and he can perhaps make it so interesting for us when we're in the museum. A dull museum, it looks like, but if you enter and if there's a curator who can take you through that, he can make it very, very interesting and exciting for you.
And since it's for a social issue,
Yes,
I think the history might give a connect to that particular social issue so that they can bring it to life in terms of how this problem has been there throughout the ages and how it was addressed in those times, I guess.
yes. And the sculpture could be created for that issue itself.
You can create a new sculpture, absolutely.
Whatever the issue is, you can create the sculpture. If you're talking about, the girl child issue, if you're talking about lack of education in the rural side, whatever the social issue, you can create the sculpture around that. Just like you create art, just like you create content or a video or a audio or a movie or a short film, you can also create sculpture around the same issue. Those characters can define the social issue.
There's another very interesting question, Raj, from Sham.
Okay.
What are the methods for finding content gaps?
Okay. See, the first method is obviously for you to use search engines. If you just Google the way a customer would search for your product or service, you will see what is already existing. And you'll be able to see who are the people who have put out the content, what kind of content is there, what is missing in the content that potentially somebody might like. Even if you take a small thing like, let's say, for example, reviews. Okay. People write reviews, let's say of restaurants. And they say, I went to this restaurant, this dish is good or that dish is good. But the people who want to go to a restaurant are looking for a lot more information than just the dishes. They want to know the history of that. They want to know the origin of that biryani shop. They want to know where exactly it is located. They want to know valet services available for parking. They want to know if they accept credit cards. They want to know how much is a meal for two. They want to know when does it close down. They want to know if it's available till early hours of the morning. They want to know what kind of special dishes does the chef serve. Are dishes different on different days? Are there specialities that they serve on different days? There is so much that the person actually wants to know. So even here you see there'll be a lot of content when you search for reviews of restaurants that you feel that there's a lot that you can put in there. Phone numbers are missing sometimes when people write something about a restaurant. The phone number is one thing that people want because I like the review that you wrote. I want to just call up the restaurant and book a table. Phone number is not there. I Google, phone number is not there. The restaurant is not there on Google Maps. So you see, gaps will always be discovered when you start searching for it. The other thing is to use your Google keyword tool. The tool can tell you a lot about the gaps.
There's another question here from Anchal Rathi.
Okay.
What is the best way to find out where your customers are On which platforms are they?
Okay. This one way you could start with is to look at customers you already have. Do a quick survey with them and ask them what platforms do they use. Once you've done a survey and you've got some 1,000, 2,000 responses, you already got a very good starting point to find out where customers are. If 80% of your customers are there on a platform, then you know that's potentially the platform where the rest of the customers could be. So using your existing customers, doing a survey with them is a good starting point. You also have your sales guys, the guys who take inbound calls. They can also get you a lot of information. The guys who do outbound calls, they also have a lot of knowledge with them. You could use that too. And of course, you can search all the platforms itself. You'll be able to get, and several of the platforms do give you targeting capabilities. That's another way for you to find out. So if you start with all the touch points of customers, right from your customer service to sales to doing surveys with customers at every touch point, or if you have retail outlets, look at the people who are manning the retail outlets. All of them will be able to share insights with you. That may be a great starting point.
There's another question from Saril. How do we accurately measure the ROI of content marketing campaigns?
Okay. To all those marketing professionals who ask what's the ROI of content marketing, I would like to pose a counter question. What is the ROI of your mother's influence? Let marketers say, what is the ROI of my mother? Is it the position where I am today? Is it the kind of a life that I lead today? Is it what good I do to the people around me? Is it what I professionally achieve? Is it what I personally achieved? Is it the goodness that I've translated into my family, the relationship that I have with my wife and my kids? Is all this my ROI of my mother? You have to ask yourself. The ROI is not a starting point for this. Content is where you start. Customer is where you start. And you connect the content and the customer, the ROI will automatically come. Do not be too obsessed with ROI. You all know how to, figure out ROI. Don't be too obsessed with it. Be obsessed instead with content. Be obsessed instead with your customers' problems. The closer you get to them, the better you are. I'll just tell you an example. Several years ago, Amrutanjan, right? The balm company, the ones who produce the pain balms.
Yeah.
Okay. There was an issue that they were facing within the company, and everybody was perplexed. The entire marketing team and the leadership team. They discovered that the workplace where a lot of people get headaches, nobody is using Amrutanjan. That set them thinking. They said, we have such a fantastic one. People buy it regularly when they have a headache. They use it. They tell us they use it. Sales is rocking. But why the workplace where actually people have a lot of headaches, people don't use Amrutanjan? The moment that question came up, they were searching for answers for this. They wanted to get close to the customer and find out. So the marketing team got into several offices and started actually meeting customers and finding out through them, surveying them. They found several people who got migraines and short headaches and long headaches and headaches that lasted through the day. They all said that we get all of that. I have Amrutanjan at home. I use it, but I'm not using it here. So they asked him why. So he said, the moment I apply the Amrutanjan, the smell just permeates the ambience and it tells the people around me that I'm sick. They look at me like a sick person. I don't want that. The day Amrutanjan discovered this, because they got close to the customer, Amrutanjan very soon rolled out another product which did not have any fragrance. And it made a new product out of getting close and understanding the customer. I hope that helps.
Okay, it's exactly 5 o'clock. So I think we'll have to wrap it up.
Okay.
I think in concluding what the audience felt about what you just shared, Raj, I think Srinya Chowdhury has put it very well.
Okay.
She says, I've never heard such a wonderful talk before. Please make a few more such talks on content and other marketing tools. Truly a pleasure to hear you and the way you explain things. So that about sums it up, Raj. I think it was a very, very insightful session. And thank you for taking the time to join us and to present from your point of view and your expertise,
Yes.
and for answering all of these questions with such passion, such detail, and with such insight.
Sure.
Thank you
Thank you
very,
so
very much.
much, David. It was a pleasure talking to you before the webinar over the last couple of days, as well as today. I also thank the entire Social Beat team for having given me this opportunity to talk to your audience. And the audience has been fantastic being around for this webinar and also posing their questions. Hopefully, we can all get connected on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. Have a
Absolutely.
wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and look out for our future webinars. You'll always find there's something that is going to enrich your ability as a professional in the weeks ahead. Do join us in future as well. Thank you and goodbye.